Safety first, safety, 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 my safety, the client's safety, somebody's safety. Safety always trumps everything, okay? The child abuse issues, so we go back and forth on those. Read the question. The answer lies in the question. I'll always tell you that. Go back in the question and prove it to me where you saw that. But the model that I like to teach and the model we all work by, this is what you do every day if you're in this field. Safety first, okay? If you walk into a family, you're on the phone, they are in tears, you're going to establish rapport and ask them what happened. Angry, mad, upset. I can't begin an assessment if they're crying, if they're so mad, if he's in my office pounding on my desk. Oh, sir, can you sit down and let's have an assessment? No, I got to engage him first. High in questions, I got to high in feelings, acknowledge, okay? Build rapport with that person. Then assess. Assess does not mean the word assess. Assess means gather as much information as you can. That is what we do every single day in this field. So you ask our client, how are you going to get there? Or what do you need? What service can I help you with? All of those questions. My analogy, as always, I go to the doctor. I tell the doctor I have a headache. Oh my gosh, it's been killing me, doctor, for about 2 weeks. And he says, okay, Pam, we're going to schedule brain surgery. Shouldn't there have been a couple questions in between? Did you take a Tylenol? Have you hit your head? Do you have a fever? Let me test you for COVID. Assess some more before you take me all the way to brain surgery. You will find on the test there are very few interventions. Most often they're at the assess level. And when I plan, I got to watch that word. Plan with the client, not for the client. Okay, so make sure I'm looking at planning with the client. But assess, gather more information. So in my opinion, when it says refer out for medical issues, things like that, that's still assessing because I can't do anything else until I gather more information. Okay, so gather as much as you can. We always say families together. Okay, family session, there's something going on with the family, group, couples, all seen as an individual. So all of those things are going to stay in group. So wife calls me and says, I think my husband's having an affair. I'm going to say, bring it back to group. Someone is mad in group and they're mad at each other. I'm going to say, we'll discuss it in group. There's a question I've seen about a couple that in a group session, the man says that he killed he raped someone 10 years ago. What do you do first? Ask the group. Okay, so I can't report that, right? I can only report imminent danger. So if someone is imminent danger, I report it, but I can't ask that for him. So I'm going to go to the group and ask them what they think. Okay, couples, group, individual, all one. Confidentiality, of course. Things that are confidential are what? There are 2 rules. Come on, be brave. What are the things I keep? Well, what are things I can't keep?
Danger to self and others.
You got it. You got it. So if he told me he killed someone yesterday, that is not one that I can break confidentiality. If he tells me he's going to leave my office and kill someone, I'm going to. If he tells me he's going to leave my office and go vandalize some cars, I still can't share that. I'm going to encourage him to, but I cannot share that. She's 22 and she was raped when she was 16. Can I share that? I cannot. Can I encourage her to call the police? And I'm going to encourage her. Let's sit down. Let's make it, maybe you want to process this. I can't do a thing. One of the biggest violations of the code of ethics is breach of confidentiality. And whether that's on purpose, because I think someone needs to know this, or unintentional. You work in a small agency and you're talking about people, this client that you know, things like that, and you're sharing without informed consent. That's a breach of confidentiality. That's the biggest code of ethics that we break. Okay, so just some overall rules for the test. And then in doubt, none of those rules matter. So there are very few always. I wish I could say always do this, always do that. That is just not the case. There are very few always. So what I'm going to do in the method that I teach is you're going to read the question, understand the question. What are they asking me? Okay. So then I say that the test questions are like scripture. When it says she's a married woman, that means something. When it says that he was divorced 3 years ago and he's been feeling sad for 3 years, that means something. So don't just always ignore those. Sometimes they're distractors, but sometimes they're not. You really have to read the question. So we'll get 4 questions and 4 responses. 2 of them are easily wrong. Easy. Mark them out. Okay, now you're down to 2. So 2 you have left. You're going to go back to the question and see if I can prove that, especially in the vignettes. Where do I see those words? Prove it. And if I still can't do that, then I'm going to then compare the 2 to each other and see which is the better of the 2. So if you've had any of the other training programs, the rules don't change, and I just don't do the acronyms. I just can't. And if it works for you, please do it. I just don't have enough memory. What about siblings that are both clients? So in the real world, I wouldn't do that. In the test world, I haven't seen that. They would be. There's not a reason you can't. I think it'd be conflict of interest. But I still could, if that happened, I still couldn't share. And if they came to me separately, then yes. I mean, if one came separate and the other came later, the one who was there first, I would have to check with him because he's my client first. And you know, the client comes before everybody, everything. Client before your job. Why do we have the code of ethics? Because the client. Why did you get up and breathe this morning? Because the client. Client always first. So I would have to check with the client first if I got a question like that. Okay. So then I'm going to pull up I'm going to use Social Work Exam Services. It's one of my favorite study guides. Any questions, anybody? Okay, so I'm going to pull up Social Work Exam Services. We're going to use that one. I just like the way they talk about APGAR is good. I think APGAR is, she's got the one book with the most information. I don't know that she has all the information, but she's the one. But I'll tell you always, please study more than one group, one person. Do not get all of your information from the same person. And if you're doing the APGAR book and Pocket Prep, that's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So please don't do that. Pick something else. You don't want to get used to the way that any one person writes the questions. You want to make sure that you are getting questions from different sources, because if you get the way that one person writes them, then you're not going to be used to it. And also, APGAR is not the best for processing. She's really good for content, but not the best for how to. And what we know is 80% of those questions are critical thinking skills based on content. What they want to know is, do you know what to do in this particular situation? Because in our lives, every day we get like all these different things that come up. So what they want to know is, do you know, should this happen? Okay. Is that a question? Come on, somebody ask me. Okay, so X and Y management. What are those? Anybody be brave? So in an agency, we have 3 types of management styles. We have the X and the Y. The X was the one that's been around forever, okay? And the X one is the one that employees hate. We don't like it at all. However, it gets the most work done. That is the scientific method. That is my X. Okay. They're by McGregor. Somebody. Okay. So they're by McGregor. And my X theory, and I know some of you know this one, so just chime in, please unmute yourself. My X theory is the one that gets the work done the fastest. That's most often like a plant, like there's a Volkswagen plant in this area, and my Volkswagen plant, they work on how many cars they put out, right? Putting out cars. Doesn't matter your name, doesn't matter who you are, get on that line, puts that one part on so we can get this car put out. That is the theory X. scientific measurement, scientific practice. That is where the term the Hawthorne effect came from. So Hawthorne was he owned it was like a GE company, and they were putting parts and pieces together. So he came up with the Hawthorne effect. What does that one say? Oh, I know somebody knows that. What does the Hawthorne effect tell me? You can type in if you'd like. The Hawthorne effect is that while the cat is away, the mouse will play. People work harder when they're being watched, work differently when they're being watched. That is the Hawthorne effect. And that's where the X theory came from. Okay. So then, very tight controls, work gets done the fastest, employees are not happy. The Y is called the Humanitarian Theory. That came across later. You might see postmodern. Okay, so postmodern means anything that didn't happen like a million years ago. So postmodern is what we use now. So the Y theory, yay, yay, yay! The people are happy because they're supported by management and they have input in their job. Yes, oh, look at us, we're happy. Humanitarian method. So I know y'all have been in a meeting with a whole bunch of social workers, counselors, people who want to process everything. How fast do decisions get made using that Y theory? Oh, you're very slow. Exactly. Oh my gosh. It's painful being in a meeting with social workers. But I think this, I feel that. Oh, it's so painful. Ugh, just make a decision, get over with. Okay, but that's what we do. We respect, we process. However, so while people are happier, work gets done the slowest. That is one of the reasons it's very difficult to get things done in a human service agency. Okay, because we want to process it to death. So if a business person came in, they would just make a decision and just do it. But what if we want to process? That's just our different way of thinking. Now, the other one is the Weber's. It's called Weber's Bureaucracy method. And if you're using APGAR, these are all in either Chapter 8 or Chapter 9 in her book. Okay, so the Weber theory is where I work. I work for the state of that state. That's southern of me. So I work for the college system. Oh my gosh, you have no idea how much red tape it is. Okay, so I have to go back to work the second week of July. Why? I teach all of my classes online. Why do I have to be in a building? I'm not seeing anybody. My office is this big. I am not letting anybody come in my office. Why do I have to go back to work? Because everybody does. That's just it, because everybody does. There are no rules for anyone who's different. There's no rules because, and I could see why maybe we need our computer guys and maybe we need our secretarial staff. I can understand that. We don't have any students on campus. Why do I have to go back? Because the rule is the rule for everybody. So a very hierarchical structure. Okay, so you'll see those questions about how do you go up the chain of command. If you're in an agency, you don't get to make that decision. You go up the chain of command. That is past your pay grade. Okay, so division of labor. You do this, you do that, you do this. Has anyone ever tried to work on your own computer when you have an IT staff? It's like a cardinal sin. Okay, like, you know what? I can figure this out by myself because it takes 3 weeks for them to get over here. But if I do that, I've touched the computer. Oh. So can't do that. Division of labor. Everybody's got their very specific job. I asked for a broom once from the custodial staff. I'll get it, ma'am. I'll do it. That's my job. I brought my own broom. Okay, it's that bad. I had to bring my own broom. I didn't get caught, I guess. So, very career-oriented. People who are in the career, all they want to do is go up the chain of command. So I'm a program director at my college. And of course, most people next, they want to go up to the assistant dean and the dean and all that good stuff. All those agencies, that's what your goal is. Lots and lots of rules. Everybody has to follow the same rules in personality. It doesn't matter who you are. The rules are the rules are the rules. Okay. You go through HR, you do this, you do that, all of those things. Okay. So in this one also, you'll see sometimes that organizational chart. I've seen a question where it talks about what's it look like when it's a triangle? What's that mean? And the organizational chart are the people who are the formal people. So we have formal and informal people on the staff. So the formal people are on the chart. Okay, the CEO, the CFO, the so-and-so, okay? Those are the people on the chart. That is the formal people. The informal people, who would those be? Come on, who's an informal person that works in your agency? Workers. Like who? You have a title. You don't get your not informal. Yes, the maintenance staff, the secretaries, anyone who is staff. Most often are, not faculty or not social worker, but they're staff. Those are the informal people. The informal people are the most important, if you ask me. Okay. So if I want to get in to see the CEO, I need to make sure I make good with his secretary, right? If I want to know what's coming down the pike, I need to get in with the secretary. Those are the informal people. So those are very important. So now as we look at this one, you'll see all of those questions about who's who and what they do. So on the chart, who hires and fires the CEO? Or the agency director, sometimes that'll be called. Who hires and fires the CEO? The board, exactly. The board of directors, that is their job. The board of directors hire and fire the CEO. That is pretty much their only job. They don't have any real political say-so in the agency. Most often your board members are your friends because you're on their board and you're going to hang out together. We meet maybe 3 or 4 times a year, maybe. The question always comes up, well, they do fundraise. They give money. They give money. They don't give money. They may write a check at your annual fundraiser. However, they will kind of support you and your agency and get all of their friends to come to your fundraiser because when it's their turn, they've got a fundraiser and you're going to go to their fundraiser. So all of those things. So they're supposed to be the people that keep the CEO in check. Okay, because if you see as you go up the ladder, there's no one for her to answer to. So then if something's going on, then the CEO, the board members fire and can fire the CEO. So there's a chairman of the board. That's the person who runs the board. And then there are usually 7, 8 board members, sometimes 12, depending on how large your agency is. Anybody in their agency ever met a board member? They might have done a tour through the agency one day, something like that, but they don't know you and they don't care to know you. They have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations. Only in an emergency if the CEO really cannot, but yeah, you wouldn't see them. You wouldn't see them. Okay, so then under my CEO in a social work agency, then I'm probably looking at maybe, so most often I have a director, and then sometimes I have a clinical director and maybe an executive director. They're all very different. But then there's assistant director, and then go back down. Then those are the social workers. Okay, so if there's a problem with that whole thing of subpoena, right? So let's say I am Susie, social worker, on the line, and I get a subpoena or a court order, which means if the subpoena is from the judge, I'm going to show up because I do not want to go to jail. Subpoena is my voice. My records are the court order. They want my records. Remember? So if I get that, we always talk about the code of ethics, and the code of ethics tells me, that I'm supposed to go to court and do this. Okay. However, what I'm going to do is in an agency, I'm going to go up the chain of command. I'm going to go to my immediate supervisor and say, hey, I got a subpoena. Okay. If any of those, if it says you work in an agency, first thing you're going to do is go up the chain of command. Okay. So, and it's not going to, you're not going to skip a place. You're not going to go up to the CEO. Sometimes I've seen the correct answer to be go to the agency's attorney. It wouldn't be an outside attorney ever. So it might say if you're the assistant director and you've gotten to see a subpoena or a court order, what do you do first? You're going to go up the chain of command. Okay, and sometimes most agencies have an in-house attorney. So there's someone there to kind of talk you through the process. If you're not there, if the question doesn't say that, that means that you work in a private practice. And if you're in private practice, then you follow those rules. So then if I get a court order or a subpoena from a judge, I am going to show up because I do not want to go to jail. I'm going to ask my client first, right? I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Unless the question says I can't, unless the question says you cannot, I'm going to say to my client, I got subpoenaed for your records. Do you mind signing this release? Blah, blah, blah. If she says yes or no, I'm still going. I am not going to jail. That if violating that court order or subpoena is the same thing as if you got a traffic ticket and you didn't go to court for that. Okay? You will show up. You will say, Your Honor, this is privileged information. Privilege only is a court word. Every other word you would use would be confidentiality. You only use privilege in court. I say it's a privilege for me to have this information. I've got this information. It's a privilege, and I don't want to violate that privilege by sharing it with court. The first thing I'm going to say is, Your Honor, drop it. Just please drop it. And he's going to say, yeah, right, bam, not going to happen. So then I'm going to say, at least narrow the scope. That just means just please look at the few days that you're talking about. Don't look at all that childhood stuff. Just look here. He's probably still going to say no. Then I'm going to ask him to at least seal the records, because everything in court is public information. You can go and you can see anything that happened unless you ask for the records to be sealed. Okay? So then I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to cover my client. So let's say, the client, that's a murder charge or one of those things that I knew about for prior. I still have to protect him. That is my job. If I do not protect him, if I get up there and I just start spilling my guts and I haven't said one word about trying to, his attorney's going to come back and sue me. He's going to try to go after my license because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I can't help what the judge does. I'm only in control of what I did. So you've worked so hard to get that license, protect it with everything. Okay? Questions on that? Those 3 styles of management. Okay, so let's talk about some of these others. There are always a couple of drug questions on there that most often we don't discuss. Just a couple of things, and maybe you don't know. AA, the 12-step group, that is not a faith-based group. There are 12 steps. Bill W., the founder, wanted it to be the God as you know him. Okay, so in the South, they're most often held in churches, but it is not a faith-based group. So if you have a client who says, oh, he's an atheist, he doesn't believe, it is not faith-based. When it comes to abstinence, and then when it comes to drug treatment in general, most programs teach abstinence, never use again. Social workers also believe in the harm reduction method. The harm reduction teaches people to use, but to use safely. So if you see that on the question, the harm reduction method would be handing out needles. So someone who's, my drug users, handing out clean needles. Methadone, which is what we use to break the opioid addiction. That is harm reduction. You're still using, but you're not using enough to have to go out and rob a house or anything like that. Okay, you need to know, like, alcohol is a depressant. It feels good after the first couple, but later on that night, the more I drink, the better you look, that kind of thing. So just know that is a depressant. Okay, opioids, those are our biggest things, of course. Opioids are extremely addictive. The only drug that you could die from when it comes to withdrawal, that would be alcohol. You get the delirium tremors, DTs. So if a client comes in and they, I've seen a question, a 50-year-old man comes in, he's been clean for 2 years, and he tells you that he has been drinking for the last 24 hours and he wants to stop, but he feels sick. That's a 911 call, because DTs, you can die. Opioids, you'll want to die, but it won't kill you. So DT, alcohol withdrawal, is something that you really have to be concerned with. Okay, can you see my question number 1? I need some chime in. I need some type in the chat box. I need some something, okay? What's the difference between ethics and values? And when it says that, it means the code of ethics. What is the difference? 1, 2, 3, or 4? I got a 1. Anybody else? This is not one you can prove. So this is one that's based on what you know about the code of ethics, as well as what you know about values. Oh, I said another one. Anybody else? Okay. So then the ethics are the standards that I follow. They may not agree with my values. My values, my morals have no place whatsoever in my practice. Okay. I may think that, drinking is wrong. I may think that divorce is wrong, and I'm entitled to my values. I'm never going to change my values. However, if they take a role in my practice, that's a problem. And that would be one of the very few times that you go to the supervisor. So that is when feelings get in the way of you and the practice. Okay, I don't like her. I don't like him. I think she's wrong. Any of those things are one of the very few times that you go to the supervisor. If you hadn't had me before, I'll remind you, you are the very, very best social worker. Best, best, best. So you almost never refer out. You are the bomb diggity. My kids would say, Mom, that's old. Okay, so the only time you're going to refer out is, first of all, if I've seen you naked. That'd be your ex, your mom, your dad, your cousins. If I've come close to seeing you naked, I cannot treat you. Those will go away. Then, if I'm out of my scope of practice, if I'm out of my scope and practice and I live in a city, then often I can find somebody else, right? I can refer the client to someone else. However, if it says you live in a rural area, the assumption is there's no one else there. So it's your job to research to figure out what to do. And if it says seek consultation from a colleague, that is probably not the right answer. You're looking for something that says that person is the expert. Okay, so they know more than you. The assumption is your colleagues know as much as you do. So it might even be, let's say it's an eating disorder case. It doesn't have to be a social worker. You're going to seek someone who's got some knowledge of that specialty area if you live in a rural area, because you have to treat that person. There's nobody else. Now, if you live in the city, then they'll give you some options to where, if it doesn't say they live in a rural area, then those are the ones that are okay to refer out. Okay, but check all those answers, because many times you're making sure that you know the very best thing to do. Okay, I think number 2, we all know. A social worker learns that a coworker who's often under the influence of either drugs or alcohol is seeing clients. The worker should, yes, go speak to him first. There are some times when I don't, though. I've seen that on the test. Where are some times that I might not go to my colleague first? Anybody? Let's say that he is a pedophile. Let's say that he hadn't been caught. So it's not necessarily a crime I'm looking for, but if he has ever been charged with hurting children or hurting adults, that was something. Yes, if you got it, you got it. It's the same as everything else where I break confidence, if there's immediate danger. Bingo. Good job. Yes. Okay. Let's see here. Number 3. In the informal organization, the social worker agency would not expect to find what? The informal. Remember, my name is not on the chart if I'm informal. What would I not expect? Consensus? Girl, You know that all them secretaries get together and decide to blackball you. That's happened. Okay, maybe it's just me because I keep stealing their pens. But often there's consensus, that's for sure. It's for printed communication. When those informal people are together, when it's in the break room and we're talking, or we're talking about how much we don't, I can tell you now, I've talked to all my colleagues, I do not want to go back to work. I've made it very clear. We've talked about it. Do you think I put an email to my boss saying I don't want to go back to work? Not at all. Not printed. I'm not putting that in writing, but we'll talk about it. Did you hear the agency's closing? Did you hear that so-and-so had an affair with so-and-so? Did you know that we might get laid off? Did you know any of those things are things that are informal and that we couldn't put that in writing? A formal person, of course, you get an email from your boss, right? Comes down. So then, informal, you would not expect that. Always like this one. Number 5, the major obstacle to use of information systems and objective data to assist administrators in improving efficiency is the use of informal systems. That's IT. Okay, that's a big old word for the IT people. So why is it that IT doesn't work? We don't even use it. Y'all know when COVID hit and half you had to work at home, you went, oh, I can't. It's 3. Yes, very good. It is 3. It is not. It's not the clients. It is not the administration. It's most often. I'm sorry. It's not the clients. It's not the infrastructure. It's the administration that doesn't want to use it. We've worked in the field a long time where we were like, oh, don't do that. We can't put that down. Okay. My very first job a million years ago, I was writing notes, and laptops had just came out. Actually, no, we had big computers, and I typed my notes, and my supervisor said to me, and this was probably 93, 94, around that time. My supervisor said to me, don't type them. People can actually read them. And that was kind of, that was the time. Like, you couldn't read the notes because they were all blurred and, all that good stuff. So it's all it has to do with us. We're uncomfortable. Sometimes we think that our clients are uncomfortable, but it really is us. Okay. Number 9, I've seen some of these, and these are in the APGAR book also. A social worker has informal power derived from a strong relationship with a respected supervisor. This is an example of what? What kind of power is this? You're friends with your kids go to the same school, you're hanging out with, we go to the same church, we have a relationship. What kind of power is that? That is referent power. Exactly, because I have a relationship with them. Okay. So when it comes to those, they're in the APGAR book. Let me see. Let me pull those up. You can't see the question. It's number 9. Do I need to reshare? Did it go away? See it now? Better? Yes? Blink your head. Thank you. Sorry about that. Not really sure what happened there. Okay. Okay. So expert power, what's that one? Literally what it means. I may not have the formal title after my name, but I'm the expert in that area. Okay. So for example, if you work in an agency and you're bilingual and you're the only one who's bilingual and they need you, you're an expert. You're the expert power. Okay. So then, are you the actual power? Many times you're not on the hierarchy, but you got the power right then and there because I need you. So that's expert power. Okay. So question number 9 is 1. It is 1. Referent power because you have a relationship with that person. Okay. Number 10, a factor that contributes to the development of groupthink mentality within a policy-making committee is what? What is that whole groupthink? You got it, okay? So groupthink, you've all been guilty of it. Groupthink is when we get together and we're afraid to disagree. Okay? I cannot stand Chinese food. Nothing personal, just can't. Okay? And especially the buffet style. Oh my gosh, just not my cup of tea. So when I first moved here, I was new, didn't know the people, trying to make friends with people at lunch. They would go to the Chinese all the time. Did I say anything? Because that's groupthink, because I want to just get along and just be friends. I didn't know anybody. After about a year, I finally said, enough already. I cannot stand Chinese. Okay, so that's what groupthink is. So then the boss says, hey, next week, let's all come to work in our pajamas. And they're like, oh, gosh, no. Oh, no. Yes, so they're all going to say no. Because they're all thinking no, but they're all going to say yes because they don't want to rock the boat. They just want to all get along. So sometimes he'll hire a confederate, someone who is a group member who he has asked to say no, to fight with me, to disagree. Because we know if one person disagrees, then other people are going to disagree. So just that one person. So you might see a question. It's called the confederate. That's kind of a fake person you put in there to just disagree with him. Sometimes the devil's advocate is what you might think of it as, but that is what he does. Okay, and that word, that is 4. You want to be amicable. You just want to get along. Okay, 11. We discussed that a bit. The board function. What do they do? Except in rare instances. What is inappropriate except in rare instances? You got it. Somebody, yes. Earlier, I think you said, do you know the board members? Yeah, we rarely see them. Okay, you got it. Number 12. So systems theory, we know we use in the agency planning, and we also use that. You're squinting there. I need to turn on some old people font, I think. Is that better? Everybody see now? Okay. So then number 12 I'm looking at, that is the systems theory. So we know that systems theory is a family systems theory, but we also use it in agencies. Systems theory talks about what matches and what doesn't. I mean, that we all work together, right? So in the systems theory, we all need each other. That is, if you affect one part of the system, you affect every part of the system. So the answer is 4. It's coding, because coding doesn't belong. But let's just make sure we understand when it comes to family systems how that works. Okay, so all of those terms are correct. So then let's say that I've got this lovely family. They're amazing. Oh gosh, these people are so great. Dad's a very prestigious doctor and mother's a stay-at-home mother, and she raises little Sally and Bobby to just be these wonderful people, right? So the output to the environment would be raising Sally and Bobby to be good people. It would be mom going out and she's on the PTA, and the dad's, you know, the chairman of the board or something out, and they're just these lovely, lovely people. So the input from the environment is whatever it takes for that family to survive. In a business, it would be all the resources that you need. In the car company, like at Volkswagen, if you needed water, if you needed like tires or batteries or anything that the company didn't produce, it'd have to come in input. So input is whatever it takes for the system to run. In a family system, it's money, it's friends, it's, you know, church people and extended family. All of those things are things it takes for a system to run. That is my input. And my output is what we put out. And what goes through is the throughput. So that is what happens in the system when the input comes in. The throughput goes through. In Volkswagen, it's the plant that makes the car, and it goes out to the environment. In a family, it's the dinner time and the love and all those good things that go out to society. So in my family system, as well as in my business system, if my input stops, what is that called? I know some of you know that. When my input stops in my system, there's a systems term for that. Entropy, no G, but entropy. Yes, entropy. Yes, you get the bell. Oh, goody, goody. Okay. And then, so entropy is the slowing down, the dying of the system. And then the opposite of that, Miss Susie, social worker, comes in and she fixes the system. Now the system is in negative entropy. Yes. Yay. Okay, so negative entropy is stopping the dying process. Exactly. Good job. Good job. Systems theory terms. That's what you're going to look for. Earlier, I used the word equifinality. Equifinality just means we're all going to end up at the same place. It took us different ways to get there, but at some point, we're all going to be licensed. Okay? Mine was like before many of you were born, but hey, we'll still all be in the same place at one point. Okay? Good, good, good. That's my family systems term and systems terms in general. Okay, let me see if I back and get rid of some of these windows here. Questions so far, guys? That's my windows, and I think I lost my questions. While I'm going to pull up my questions again, I'm going to remind you of another theory that I always go over. That is my crisis intervention theory. Okay, this is also in the APGAR book. However, it doesn't look this way. The crisis intervention model is short and sweet. The assumption is that we will be in and out and we will never see these people again. And it definitely may be different in your agency. Maybe you don't do it that way, but this model was actually came out, it was developed about, oh gosh, I think about 10 or 12 years ago. It's a pretty recent one. And it was based on, you know, the school shootings and what happened after 9/11, all those really good things. So make sure that you know the crisis model. So the goal of the crisis model is to bring things back to where they were, right? So I'm going to return you to your normal place, not trying to fix up all your messed up issues, just trying to bring you back. So then the first step I'm going to do is plan and conduct a crisis assessment. That means short and sweet. How are you? I'm Pam Turner. Let's just make sure you're physically okay. The second one, we establish rapport very, very quickly. Hi, I'm part of the crisis team. We're here to get you out. We're here to make you safe. If it's a suicide and you're on the school team, hi, you know, we're here to help you process what happened. Third one is identify the major problem. So what happened just before? Before the school shooter started, did you hear him say something? Before you wanted to kill yourself, what were you thinking? All of those questions I'm going to ask. I do not want to let them emote, share feelings until we get to stage 4. Because stage 4, once you let those feelings go, we've lost information. I don't know. I'm a hot mess, and you don't even know what's coming out of my mouth. Okay, so the goal is that everybody uses the same model. So whether it be the police or the firemen, when it's a crisis, that we're all going to use the same model. That's where that came from. 5, generate and explore alternatives. Those are the resources they have already. You know, maybe have you dealt with this before? Or who can we call? Any of those things. When we develop the action plan, that is not me. I'm going to make sure you call back your agency, call back your whoever, your EAP, your personal therapist, whatever the assignment is. And then 7, follow up an agreement. So I'm going to call them maybe a couple of days later and just say, hey, just making sure you followed up with the therapist. But I'm not treating them. The only goal is to return them back to their prior state of functioning. Okay? So let's go back to my questions. Okay, I'm going to start with 63. 65. A director can increase administrative flexibility even though board support has declined when what? Okay, so first of all, with that question, I'd make sure I knew what exactly they're asking me. I'm gonna mute somebody's in my background. Okay, so a director can increase administrative, that means her own flexibility. She has more leeway even though the board of directors have declined. So I put before my board of directors that I want to extend the agency. I think we should extend the hours, take in different people, and at this point, my board has declined. When can I continue with my process? When would that be okay? I got a 3. Three is correct. When there's conflict in the board, exactly. If they're having conflict and they can't make a decision, then I have the right to do that. I do not want to use that, of course. I don't want to, oh, they were fighting anyway, let me go ahead and make this decision. But if there's infighting in the board and they can't make a decision, and especially if it's something that my agency needs, if it's a budget issue or anything like that that can't wait, then as executive director, I have that right. Okay? Look at 66. Oh, let me pull it down. A supervisor asks a student to discuss a problematic case. The student arrives for supervision and says he has personal problems that he would like to discuss. The most appropriate response is what? So you've gone to your supervisor, you're the student, and he says, you're told it's your time to do case presentation, and all of a sudden you share that you have personal problems. What do you do? We've agreed to discuss this case, and it's important for everyone involved to do so. I don't know if I like that. That's not nice. The answer is, I don't know. What do you think? How about 1? That'd be right? Okay, so we're going, and I said it's not nice, but is that not the answer? We're here to do a job. Your personal place has no place in this job. I'm sorry you have personal problems, but does that take away from my case? Okay, so 2 is the answer. Okay, very good. And many of us would not want to do that. Oh my gosh, we're social workers and we're just going to be nice and hear their problems. No, we got to follow the rules. And if you see any of those questions that talk about, this is the rule, and in the real life, I know we discuss it up and down before we make a decision. But if the question says, if the person brought drugs to the plant and they brought drugs, we're going to kick them out because that was the rule. Number 69, look at that one. An agency standing committee on strategic future planning is usually not used to what? I got a 3. Usually not used to make emergency decisions. Anybody want to tell me what a standing committee is? Okay. A standing committee means that it's been there always. So okay, we're always voluntold, okay? So exactly. When we go back to work, you're voluntold to be on some committee. So if you're familiar with most churches, there's always a building fund committee. Always. It's been there since the church started, and it'll be there from the end. So the standing committees are the ones that are always there. Sometimes we have an ad hoc committee, which means they're just there for that particular issue. We might have a sometimes like a legislative committee that's just there to discuss the law. So all of those things are just because. So, or just, just happen of this one thing. But a standing committee is something that's always, always there. So in case something comes up, the standing committee is already there to address it. Okay, so the answer to 69 is 3. They're usually not used to make emergency decisions. Okay, they can diffuse authority, reduce hostility, evaluate a problem's complexity. Okay, but because they're standing. Okay, and they're standing on strategic future. That's a church building fund, because we're gonna get bigger and keep giving money. Okay. So then, let's look at 70, effectiveness in social services. But before we go there, let's talk about cost benefit versus cost analysis. I'm sorry, cost benefit versus cost effectiveness. What's the difference? My analysis is always going to be at the end of the program. My ratio it's like money per money, okay? But a cost effectiveness is I am looking about how much money I gave you and how much money I expect to give back. That is my cost benefit. Cost benefit means money. Okay. Cost effectiveness measures the ratio of the program to what it measures. I gave you $500,000 and you were supposed to decrease pregnancy in my area. Did you do that? Cost effectiveness. Was my money worth it? Okay. When you are paying money for your kid's college or saving money for something, when you're paying money for this license, you want cost effectiveness. You paid for this tutoring, you expect it to be effective. That's cost effectiveness. Cost benefit, again, is money for money. Okay, so an agency gives all this, give this money to an agency. You want them to decrease pregnancy, to stop AIDS, to stop COVID, whatever we want them to do, I'm looking for the effectiveness. I look at the estimate, the program cost, all those good things. Cost benefit means that I want to get more than I put in. Okay, a hospital, a private hospital, they will spend thousands of dollars of making sure they get the top equipment and the best doctors, and they want to just do all these wonderful things. And yes, they do want to be effective and save lives, but they want to make money. The goal of hospitals, those are not nonprofit, they want to make money. Okay, so my cost benefit is then, will I get the money I put in, and then how much money will we save? Increase of productivity, reduction in cost. Are we saving time, which is money? Okay, so cost benefit is looking at how much money I got. So the analysis is at the end. Okay, so at the end of the program, I do a cost analysis to see the money I put in, was it worth it? The cost benefit, money, cost effectiveness, dollars. Okay, so just if you see those terms, you'll want to know those. One of the other things I want to make sure that we talk about is summative and summative and formative. Those are types of program evaluations. What's the difference, guys? Anybody know? Exactly. Formative assessments are going through. The summative is at the end. So the question says, you know what, I've done a project and I'm looking So I am evaluating the effectiveness of this drug treatment program that is at the end. Okay, so my formative is while I'm still forming. And maybe I'm halfway through and I'm seeing if this works. I'm going to take a look back at it and is it working? Because I have time to change it. But the summative is at the end. I don't have any time to change it. So remember, form when we're still forming. Okay, it's not the end of the project. We are still forming it. And my summative is at the end. I'm looking back. It's a summary and seeing how well it worked. Okay, summarizing how well this program worked. So sum, the total, end, formative while I'm forming. Got it? Okay. Okay. So then let's just keep going. Thank you. Number 70, effectiveness in social services is difficult for managers to define because how is it hard for us to define? Anybody? Okay, goals are ambiguous and unclear. Program evaluation is expensive and it is difficult to define. Funding sources vary widely in their expectations and want often contradictory results. I don't think that's it. Social services are used to help many different groups for different purposes, making it impossible to apply adequate criterion, or the technology for measuring is limited. So the answer is A, and that one, and you're correct, but that's the problem. So for many years in social work, we have decided that effectiveness is how the client feels. Oh, but they felt better after they left my session. So we still struggle with what it's like to have those goals and objectives of how it being measurable. So again, I'm old. So, back in my day, it really was, if the client said they felt better, that's how we measured if it was successful or not. Now we need to make sure we have objective goals and objectives that are measurable. So you might see that on the test. What you want to look for is, is Johnny, can I measure it? Johnny will sit down in his seat at least 5 times per hour. Johnny will raise his hand at least 5 times per whatever. Very, very clear goals. So that's how we measure it, and that's one of the problems in the real world of social work, and even now, because when we're applying for monies, grants, which are called requests for proposals, they sometimes want to see real world numbers as evidenced by, you got it. That means there's some research there. Where's my bell? Good, good, good. You got it. You got it. Okay. So especially when I'm looking at, we're talking about effectiveness and all those things that happen at the end, that's when I'm looking at my grants. If somebody's given us some money and they want us to do something with that money, and we have to prove at the end what we did with that money. Okay, so you might see a request for proposal or an RFP. That is just a name for a grant. Okay, so you can oftentimes go and look for RFPs. They'll be put out by the government or an agency, and so it may say that you're asking to, your boss asks you to respond to another one here. You can never quote it, cite it, but it's great for finding quick answers. Okay, so then an RFP, it really is a requesting for, the agency has said there's a grant coming out, and the granting agency has said we are looking for an agency that can improve services to our Hispanic community whose parents are involved, whose parents are in prison. Okay, so that's kind of what the heading may be. And if you see an RFP, request for proposal, or a grant, the first thing you do is you make sure that you read it, making sure that your agency qualifies. There's nothing worse than doing all the research and then your agency doesn't qualify. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is make sure that you qualify for it. And then when it comes to your RFP, your request for proposal, you have to have measurable goals. We will do this, and they have to match up with what the grant says. Now, when it comes to grants, we have two types. We have our block grants and our categorical grants. What's the difference? Come on, you know my block of cheese. Linda, are you on? Should not be there.
Oh, I'm here.
What's a block grant versus a categorical grant?
I'm not sure.
Ah, so my block grant is my block of cheese. That's my big old loaf of Velveeta. And I always think of block because it's square, right? That big old block. And the government says, Pam, I just need you to go and feed people. That is a block. They don't care how I feed people, just feed them. And if my agency already has bread, that's what we're good at, then we're going to make grilled cheese sandwiches for everybody. That's a block. My categorical grant is they're going to tell me exactly how I got to feed them. Girl, you know, we got to feed the little kids cheese soup. And we got to feed the old people macaroni and cheese eggs. All of those things. There's very specific guidelines when I have a categorical grant. So I have to respond to those numbers. Okay, so block grant, oh, look at you, SNAP can be a block grant because the food stamps are federal dollars given to the state, and the state decides how they want to spend it up. So they decide what their categories will be. That's why poverty is different in each area. Okay, so then what do agencies prefer, block or categorical? Girl, give me a block grant. SNAP is our food stamp program. I'm answering a question in the chat box if you're not sure where I'm at. So let me show you. So okay, so what the question was, is SNAP a categorical grant, or is it a is it categorical, or it's a block? So it's not a grant, it's just funding. So we wouldn't put that under the categories of grant, is how the government funds us. So when it comes to funding in our area, federal funding comes from the government. It tells us how we can, well, let me back up. So all states get federal monies. Social Security has its own separate building, correct? So Social Security is federal, okay? By itself, federal. If you get Social Security disability, if you get Social Security anything, then that comes from the feds. Separate building, separate place, okay? So the Social Security has a couple of caveats. So if I can pull that up. It's going to show you a question of what it looks like, and I'll keep talking. I think those are under my policies as opposed to this one under policies. She asked me about Social Security. Those are under the policies we follow. Sorry, it's down here with Code of Ethics and Policies. There we go. Okay, So in general, so let's kind of talk about what those look like. So if it comes to, like she asked me about SNAP. SNAP is our food stamp program. TANF is our temporary assistance for needy families. So the federal government gives money to the states. If you have worked your whole life and you've put in at least 10 credits, then you will get Social Security disability if you get hurt and you can't work. If you get a good lawyer, you see all those commercials on TV all the time, right? So if you have paid in, then you will get that money out for disability. So that's SSD. So if Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. However, if you have not worked and you get disabled and you are disabled, you don't have any money in, you will get SSI. Okay, look at number 18. A social worker seeking continuing cash assistance for indigent clients who recently lost his vision after a serious automobile accident would probably refer the client to, who would get SSI. He's indigent and he hasn't worked, so he doesn't have any money to put in, so he can't get any money out. So that is a federally funded program that goes through Social Security. Everybody across the United States gets the same amount, based on whether or not you worked. Okay, so if you worked 10 credits, 10 years in the system, you get hurt, you can pull Social Security disability, you're probably going to be getting $12, $13, $14, $15 a month based on your income when you worked. Okay. SSI is going to be the bare minimum. It's maybe about $500 or $600 a month because you don't have any credit to put in to draw from. So SSI, again, these are for federal dollars, $770. Thank you, $770. Okay, so that's what you get if you have never worked. Those numbers are same across the platform. Every state gets the same as a federal guideline, so those numbers are set. Okay, so then when it comes to our other funding sources, our other state benefits, so then the federal government gives that same money to the states, and they divide it up. They decide how they're going to hand it out. So then if you're getting TANF, which is temporary need for temporary assistance for needy families, or SNAP, that's federal dollars, but your state decides how much you get, because the poverty guidelines are different in each state. So then the state decides. So I live in Chattanooga, and we for $500 or $600 a month, you could get a decent one bedroom. You could do okay. There's some areas that you just couldn't even live that way. I live in Miami, and $500 you would not be able to live at all. That's just not possible because of the cost of living. So that is my federal dollars given to the state, and the state decides the federal guidelines. The state guidelines. So they decide how much food stamps you'll get, how much TANF you get. They decide what Medicaid will pay for. Okay, so Medicare, care for the elderly, federal dollars. So you worked all your life, you get Medicare. That's what your insurance is after you get old or you're indigent. Medicare. Medicaid, again, so the federal government gives a pot of money to the states. The states decide what Medicaid will pay for. You have this pot of money, okay, and that would be those are my block monies. You get that pot of money, and you decide what you're going to cover. You decide what the guidelines are. So I'm from South Florida. Lived in South Florida. Medicaid did not pay for like this extreme dental care. Here in Tennessee, I've seen kids with a full set of braces that the Medicaid will pay for here. So it depends on what that is. So that's between federal dollars as opposed to state dollars and how it comes down through. Okay. Anybody want to share what it looks like in your area when it comes to like what Medicaid will pay for or what it won't? If we look at 17, the fastest growing component of the federal assistance program is what? It is food stamps. Where I live, Husky D pays for everything. Is that the name of your Medicaid program? Like I work in Georgia and it's called Peach Care in Georgia. Okay. So it really depends on how many dollars the federal government gets and how the state wants to spend them, and if the state wants to put more money into that. We care for the elderly, aid the poor, Medicare, Medicaid. Okay. So the number 18, that was my SSI. That's what that would pay for. That's what that one is. Let's go look at that one. Let's look at 21, workman's comp. How does that work? Workman's compensation pays cash benefits and medical benefits to workers who experience injuries on the job. Workman's compensation is what? Okay, it is insurance program. Okay, so any idea with workman's comp, who pays for that? Your employer. Your employer. So they don't pay if you get hurt, they pay all the time. That's a federal insurance that's required if you have at least so many, I think it's 15 employees. So you have to have at least 15 employees, you have to pay into this in this unemployment. So yeah, I hear people say I'm gonna drain my employer because I want to stay home. They've already paid into it. It's an insurance plan. So they're not giving you a check every month out of their current budget. They've already paid into the workman's comp plan. Okay. How about 22? A program that is neither supervised nor administered by a state agency is what? Has nothing to do with the state. What is that? Social Security, their own separate building, their own separate guidelines. If you, whatever you make for Social Security, you'll make it here. If you move to a different state, you'll get the same thing. Okay, but you have to have paid in. If you have not paid in, then you won't get anything out, but you'll get SSI if you qualify. Okay, so one of the reasons the poorest people in the United States at this point is African American older women, because many times people like my grandmothers and maybe some great grandmothers, they cleaned houses, they worked for people, they did laundry, and they have worked very hard, but working for that family did not give them Social Security benefits. So they may have worked their whole life, but nothing ever paid in, so they have nothing to draw from. So that's the importance of kind of, that's that little FICA guy on your check, and you're like, oh my gosh, why is he taking out so much money? Yes, that is supposedly your future. Not sure it'll be there, but supposedly that's your future. Okay. Number 23, I mentioned this already, a categorical grant. What is that one? Now, if you're an independent worker, you can pay your own Social Security. Yes, you can, Rosa. I just don't know that most people can afford it. But yes, you sure can. If you're an independent worker, I wouldn't suggest you pay Social Security, just my personal opinion, because if you are going to retire, then you could probably invest your money and get a higher rate than you would get at Social Security. So I'd invest it differently. Okay, you got it. Categorical grant is one. It is definitely one. That's a categorical grant. Got it, got it, got it. Look at number 25. That's an interesting one. A married supervisor develops an intimate relationship with a supervisee. Indicate the statement that best reflects the underlying principle that should be invoked. This is a code of ethics question. I got a 4. The behavior is exploited and violates professional ethics. Someone be brave enough to tell me why? Why though? Because at one point he was my boss, right? At one point he did have power over me. That's the problem. Okay, so but at one point he did. It was exploited because he had power over me, or has power over me. Okay. Got it. Okay. 26. Look at that one. A supervisor in a child welfare agency learns that the agency's personnel officer has been diverting applications from gay and lesbian applications with the tacit approval of the executive director and the board as well. Gays are never considered for employment, though perhaps qualified. What ethical principle of the social work code of ethics should guide the supervisor's actions in this situation? Okay. The word tacit, the tacit approval, means she didn't do anything to stop it. Okay, she didn't really say yes, but she didn't do anything at all to stop it. You got it. The supervisor should take aggressive. The supervisor should take aggressive personnel actions to end the discrimination. Not okay. Not okay. Not okay. Remember, when it comes to discrimination as opposed to prejudice, and we all have our own prejudice. We all have our own bias. Okay, so there may be things that I prefer more than others. However, if that affects who I hire, who I let live next to me, who I want to rent to, then that is illegal. Discrimination is illegal. Prejudice is not. Okay. So then, we've seen the question before about the adoption agency when you have a gay client that comes to the adoption agency. So be really careful when you're looking at those tests on the questions on the test, because you're like, oh yeah, I've seen something similar to this. Be sure that you read the question. So if it is a private adoption agency, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the clients they probably need to go someplace else. Okay, because my agency obviously doesn't want to give them a baby, and I'm supporting my client. My client comes first. Sue them, do whatever they want to later, but my client wants a baby. Okay, and my agency, especially if they're a private agency, they're not taking any federal tax dollars, they have the right to do that. So if it doesn't say, though, it's a private agency, then I'm going to look at taking legal steps. Okay, so I still may refer the client to another agency, but be sure you read your other steps. So if it's a first one, remember, I'm going to assess. If it's the first question, I'm going to ask more questions before I make a decision. But if it's a private adoption agency, they have that right, and my client's needs come first. Okay. 27, let's look at this one. Food stamps and Medicaid, those are examples of what?
Interesting.
Repeat.
Can't see the word correct.
They are not block grants. They're not grants at all. That's money from the government, but they're not considered grants. Okay. That's hard dollars the states get every month. Grants or something are not always hard dollars. That is exactly in-kind assistance. In-kind means anything that is not cash. If your agency is helping a fundraiser and someone donates the arena, someone donates the bus, those are in-kind assistance. Anything that is not cash is in-kind. Okay. 28, an example of a program that reflects a social investment. A social investment. It is not 1. I'm investing in the future of society. And not 4 either. So now we're down to 2 or 3.
It's
It's not 2 either.
it's 3.
It's 3. Exactly. Investing into my future is prenatal care. If we spend dollars up front with making sure moms get prenatal care, do we not save money on the other end? We spend thousands and thousands of dollars taking care of babies that were premature, when if we could put that money in up front, we wouldn't be doing that. Okay, so the investment is the key word. Investing in the society. Investing in is what is best for the society, is putting that money into prevention. Okay, and that is making sure that doesn't happen. Okay, we're going to do a couple more questions, guys, and then we're going to wrap it up. Let's see here. Oh, look at 35. What do we know about WIC?
Okay.
WIC is 2, women, infant, and children. WIC has less stringent guidelines than food stamps. Okay, many of your, oh, let me back up. So oftentimes you'll see on the test, are people who are not citizens, are they eligible for government assistance? Are they eligible for assistance? The answer is sometimes. So if you're not born in this country, if you're not here, if you're not born in this country, you cannot get food stamps for you. You cannot get Medicaid for you. However, if your children are born in the States, you can. Those are federal or state dollars. But we have a lot of sanctuary cities, and my sanctuary cities, we really understand that if it's an investment, that if we don't put this money in now, then we're going to put it in later. So many times there are agencies that assist people who are not here legally without asking the questions. In our area, we have La Paz, and what they do is they really just, that you can get medical care. They can guide you to places that do. They have their own separate food bank, because many people who are here illegally are terrified of going to the food bank. So things like that. So there are programs that you can get if you're not here legally. So WIC, if you're a pregnant woman and you're not here legally, you can still get WIC for your unborn child. Okay. So some of you may live in DACA cities. DACA are the people who were brought here before when they were little, not by choice. So it was, Obama wanted it to be a federal guideline, but it was not approved. So there are state guidelines. So there are some state guidelines that allow children who were brought here illegally to then apply for Pell Grants to be able to go to college. But in most states, it is not. So in South Florida, many of my states, people where we have a very large population, we will see a lot more flexibility. In my area in Tennessee, we do not have that. There was a story in the news not so long ago about a man who was pulled over. He was driving too slow on the interstate, and they pulled him over, and he was deported. So I promise you, our people who are here without citizenship, they're not raking our system. They are not trying to, be caught, be seen. That many often not going to the doctor, not going to the hospital, because they know that anything like that can get them pulled over. So he was going too slow on the interstate, and he ended up being deported. So that's the state I live in currently. Okay, but WIC is one that it is available to pregnant moms. Okay, and we know also that our largest growing population are Hispanic children. So in America, the largest growing population is Hispanic children. There are a couple of reasons behind that. We know that many of our Hispanic populations are Catholic, and many Catholics use the rhythm method. For me, that would be the guess method. I guess God knew enough not to let me convert to Catholicism, because I'd be guessing. So when you ovulate, good things like that, I haven't a clue. Okay, so that is one of the reasons. Also, many of our Hispanic families just value family. That is wealth. And if we're Americans, we often don't see that. Most Americans rather have the big house with 2.5 kids, and many of our Hispanic Latino population would much rather have the smaller house with lots of kids around. That's a blessing from God, and that is wealth and love. So we do know that's our largest growing population. And one more thing on that, since I'm on culture, the term machismo, that is a term you might see on the test. It's not that he's the macho guy and they're afraid of him. You'll see many times Hispanic families do not, mom doesn't make the decision. She has to ask dad. That is not that because she's afraid of him. It's because he sees himself as the protector of the family. So when decisions are made, he needs to make the decision that he believes is the best for his family. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Head of the household. Yes, yes. Okay, let's look at 36. A distinguishable characteristic of public assistance or welfare program is what? $36 is 1. They are means tested. I always say to my kids, how did you mean to pay for that? Okay, so means tested is based on your income. What do you have? Your means. So to qualify for most public assistance, it's based on how much you make as well as what your assets are. So that is means tested. Exactly, exactly. Now, we do have things that are available to everyone. Those are universal programs. Universal programs or institutional programs, they don't have any stigma attached, right? If you send your kids to public school, that is part of the government assistance program. If you use a public library, if you went to school on a Pell Grant, Pell Loan, Pell anything, that is part of government assistance. Those things are universal. They're not based on your means or your income. They're available to everybody, but that is still part of welfare. We don't like to admit it, but it's just a fact. Okay. If you got a home loan because you were in the military or FHA or one of those things, that's government assistance. So, but yet those don't carry the same stigma that things like food stamps do. Those are universal things. So let's look at number 38. A federally supported medical insurance payment program that provides health services to the elderly is what? I care for my elderly. Yeah, I care for my elderly. You got it. You got it. Medicaid is usually based on income. Medicare is based on age. By the way, if you're on Social Security disability, Medicaid is not free. You can get it and it's inexpensive, but it's not free. Okay. Care is 65 or older. Yes. And so Medicare Part A, does that cover everything?
No, it only covers the hospital.
You and maybe some medication, half a second of medication, maybe not much at all.
Okay.
So mostly what you're looking for is then to buy the supplements. So you'll see on TV when open enrollment comes around, that is like, usually by like November, open enrollment comes around for Medicaid and all of our insurance policies, which are third-party payments. That's all that means. Third-party payments are insurance programs. So it opens up for enrollment and you'll see all the commercials on TV. Buy Medicaid Part D, C, F, H, I, J. Because Medicare in itself is not enough to cover most of the needs. Okay. Number 39, the residual perspective on social welfare stresses the idea that what? What is residual? The answer to that one is 1. So residual perspective on social welfare stresses that the idea that social welfare programs are designed as a safety net for people who are incapable of benefiting from normal market services. Okay, so a residual program would be what? Am I giving me some examples? Okay, so many of my means tested programs are residual. Okay, however, there are some other programs that are also residual. FEMA, if there's a thing, something in your area that your house is gone, you can't get jobs, any of those things, those are residual because right now you cannot benefit from everything else that's going on. A disaster. So when FEMA comes out, does everybody qualify for FEMA assistance? That's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, by the way, if you're not sure what that is. Right, everybody doesn't qualify, only if you're in that disaster area. One of the things that you want to happen is for your governor to apply to declare your state in a state of emergency, because once that's done, FEMA can step in. So when he goes on TV and says, I'm declaring an emergency, ding, 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 that's a key that FEMA will step in. Okay, so it's not available to everybody. It's a residual program that is there for when you need it. There's another term called lesser eligibility. Lesser eligibility is back in that old time of, those history days, that social work 101. That's how we decided who would get help and how much you would get. The rule was that you could not make any more than the person who was making the lowest. So that's lesser eligibility. That's what that term means. Look at 47. A feature of a block grant, they tend to what? Block grant, the answer is 1. Everybody wants a block grant. So there's lots of competition. So if there's a offering to kind of get that monies, I'll take it because I can do it the way my agency does it the best. Look at number 56. That's an interesting one. That's one of those code of ethics, and especially now that we see more and more of the things are happening electronically. Look at 56. (56) is 4. You have to seek the client's permission. You got it. It is 4. Okay, guys, I already went over your time. I kind of like you social workers, I tutor the other people. I tutor the NCE and the LMFTs, but I have a soft spot for my social workers. I think you guys are amazing. I'm so thankful that you chose this profession and that you have chosen to allow me to be part of your professional journey. That means a huge deal to me. Okay, questions. Stop sharing.
I have a question.
Yes.
I took the LCSW exam, and when I came out, I was able to record about 15 questions that I recalled that I was struggling with. One of them is a client. Okay, clients want to directly confront his problem in therapy within a short time. What technique should the social worker use?
Okay,
they gave us 4 options.
So help me understand the question. He wants to confront his problem in a short period of time?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so my first thought is like task-centered, solution-focused, or CBT. Those are my first thoughts. What are my choices?
CBT is there. I wasn't sure. They gave us art therapy, psychodynamic, DBT, and CBT.
Yes. So CBT is and wasn't there anything in there about mood disorder or anything like that?
No.
Okay, because CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. CBT and medication is the first choice when it comes to any of the mood disorders. Okay, so depression, some anxiety. The answer for the test is CBT, cognitive behavioral. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what's DBT used for?
Borderline.
Bingo. I'm looking at mood, stabilizing your mood. So the term mindfulness came from DBT. Okay, it's mindfulness, mood disorders. We're using it now with children. We're using it with that. What's the mood disorder in children called, guys? They got that something mood disorder, dysregulative dysregulative mood disorder. So we're using that in kids. We used to call them like childhood borderline bipolars, and we don't really use that anymore. So that's that disruptive disorder in children. So we're using it with that population as well. DBT is relatively new. If you went to school, like when I went to school, when there was, my kids would say when dinosaurs roamed the land, we didn't have DBT. Okay. Do you want to ask another question? I'm sure the whole group could benefit from it.
I have another one.
Sure.
So another question says that the school was planning a trip, right, with a child with disability. The teachers were concerned about the child coping on the trip, but his mother expressed to the social worker that his child can function better than how he appears. What should the social worker do? And the only one I can remember from the options was, they gave us 4. I can only remember one. They said use a Vineland assessment, and I can't remember the other options they gave me.
Do you know what the Vineland is?
I thought that is for like assessment to know the level of functioning.
Oh, well then. So would that not be is an adaptive behavioral scale? I'll share my screen. So if I had to place money on that one, I would say that's probably one of the questions that didn't count. So that's probably one of the ones, because we don't see a lot of that in our study material. So I would bet that that's one of the ones they're prominent looking to see if we can use in the future. But yeah, it is an adaptive behavior scale. It really is kind of how children adapt. My first thought to that one was client self-determination, but it's the mother. So that's the thought about that. But yeah, it's probably the Vineland. Looking for an image. Wikipedia is always the best. I was looking for a picture of it, but they're not going to give me one. Yeah, it's just a maturity scale to see how well he can get dressed, how well he can, take care of himself. So I'm sure that was probably the correct answer.
Thank you.
Want to go one more? You good?
Sure, I'll do one more. If that is okay by everyone.
But I haven't hung up yet, so I guess so.
Okay.
We're still hanging on.
So another one that I struggled with was a client came to the emergency room delusional, as stated in his chart. He continued to be delusional when the social worker met him for interview. What should the social worker do? I remember only one option of the 4, other a competency evaluation.
So, okay, so I don't know, but a couple of things. The Code of Ethics states very clearly that if a client is, and it doesn't say in their right mind, but if a client is not capable of making their own decisions, they've lost the right to self-determination. So the most often the problem is they'll be delusional but not suicidal. Okay, so if they're delusional and not suicidal, I can't make them stay because they're not suicidal. But I also can't let them go because they're delusional. They have the right to make that decision. Okay, so I wouldn't, okay, remember that you don't want to request a psychological. You might want to have the psychiatrist see them, but not a psychological. Psychological is an educational test. That's usually not the right answer. So if I'm going to use, if I'm looking for depression or things like that, then maybe a psychiatric consult, but not a psychological. Okay, so but the goal of that is I can't let him go.
Okay, but the social worker met with the client at the emergency room for an interview. So should the social worker, I don't know, they're saying that what should the social worker do? She's trying to do an interview. Can she still go ahead with, I mean, the client is delusional.
Okay, so I cannot. Oh yes, I can. I cannot. So I can't let him go. I can't confront his delusions. So I'm probably just going to be with him in the here and now. I can't confront his delusions. I can't say, well, that's not really happening. I've got to be with him, but I can't let him go either. If it's a first question, I'm going to assess.
Okay.
And anyone else is more than welcome, but I can't let him go. And a psychiatric consult might be appropriate, but I can't let him go. Because he's not capable of making his own decisions. So that's a code of ethic one. That's a code of ethic. It says, you'll see that 20-year-old who doesn't want to, they don't want to go to the hospital, but they are not capable of making their own choices. So it's like walk them over to the emergency room. So if there's a response that said, walk them to the, call in a psych eval or walk them over to the psych floor, something to hold them, but legally I can't. I can't Baker Act them. That's the law in Florida. I can't commit them because they're not suicidal, but I can't let them go either. So that's one of those weird questions.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Are we good? Hope you found today helpful. Any questions? You're very welcome. I think just to know, so many times, as much as half of the test is the non-clinical questions. And we spend a whole lot of time learning those clinical questions, and they're important. Of course they're important, but this is just as important. How you run an agency, what to do when that subpoena comes, how to go up the chain of command, all of those things, knowing those policies, those child welfare, the food stamps. You all have that policy class. Okay, so all of those things are just as important for the test. So don't spend, and if you tutor with me, most often I'll say start at the back of the APGAR book, because many of you have started the front and it's so much and you get done. Start at the back. Okay, read the Code of Ethics. If I could say anything to you at all, read them verbatim, because many times those questions are written verbatim. And if you want to do a study guide and see what someone else says about them, okay. But read them first, because those words there are sometimes exactly the same words in the test. So you are my last group. I have probably tutored 100 different students this week, and I'm pretty sure I'm done. I think I have a bottle of wine calling me. Have a good one, unless there are any questions. For the next session, can we talk about what is the purpose of objective management techniques and social work? I already have my schedule down for next week, whatever's on the list, but if you attend, you can more than welcome to ask me. Okay? It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your educational journey. You're all going to be amazing social workers one day, and I'll remind you, I am 54. I am old. I need you to make sure and remember me when you are making lots of money and I am, like 85 walking around, or still working. Just, oh, there's Pam. Let's let's go take care of her because, she's 85 and she's still working. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Thank you, and have a great week.